Hello, my beautiful light beings, and welcome back to the Magic Exists podcast. I have a beautiful guest here. Her name is Bronté. She is an eccentric solitary witch with a main focus of magic in green witchcraft. Although her family did not declare witchcraft as a label, divination runs on both sides in Bronté's family, maternal and paternal. Growing up, she was surrounded by women who had immense talent and skill in divination, but Bronté is the first in her lineage to use cards to share messages and clarity with her clients. She uses her natural gifts of intuition, energetic sensitivities, and empathy to connect to the ethereal with the third realm. Outside the craft, Bronté shares her love of magic, storytelling, and care for others through ASMR. Her videos range from calming others into the relaxed state to fall asleep easier and to share her rich craft knowledge and performing energy work on viewers. Whatever Bronte's pursuit may be, she sprinkles magic everywhere she goes. Hello! Welcome, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Dani. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! So excited. So, my first question that I ask all my guests is what is your strongest clair, and how does that come out and represent in your life and in your readings?
Yeah, so I get different sensations, and I think all the clairs get used, but we all have ones that are much stronger than others. And it also, I find that it depends on the person I'm reading. However, I believe it's called claircognizance, which I always have a hard time saying that one, which is just the sense of knowing something and just when I'm reading, I just speak it and I do it unapologetically, obviously with empathy. But then also, I have clairaudience. When I'm reading, I hear questions come through, or I'll feel it's so hard to say or fully explain, but I would say those are probably the two strongest that I experience.
I love that you said you unapologetically share your knowing within you with empathy. And I love that because I feel like there is a little bit of a discernment when you are a reader and you are providing these beautiful divine messages to your clients where I do think, like, for example, my spirit guides, they're very kind, but sometimes they can be very blunt. And the thing that they're saying can feel aggressive for maybe our human self to really understand. So it's not that I skew the message, it's like the way I deliver it can be like soft a little bit, and with empathy, I infuse that like compassion into my messages. Do you feel like that's kind of like what you do too?
Absolutely. And I imagine you probably had the same experience where there might be a client who likes that bluntness and is all there for it and loves a sassy guide that comes through. But I do try to intuit what's going on with the individual in front of me and then adapt to that to deliver the message in the best way possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's like we're using our multidimensionality as a human and as a metaphysical, spiritual person and infusing that to really deliver the messages with kindness and love. And I think it's such a gift itself, and it's like a gift to be that kind of reader. I love all things magic, and this is literally the Magic Exists podcast. So I'm so excited to have you on here. When I was a kid, I would
Yay!
watch like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and like Harry Potter. And so for me, magic is like living limitlessly, like breaking all the barriers of my perception as a human. Tell me a little bit about what is a witch and like any amazing little tidbits you have to share about.
I, first of all, love your experience and I love how you're drawn to the magic. And the title of this podcast is just so aligning. I truly, truly am so grateful to be here. It's such a great question. And I get this asked quite a bit is what is a witch? And I think it's different for every witch because some would say it is about the certain routines and being able to perform the craft. Not everybody, though, gets the opportunity or has the privilege to perform witchcraft in a way that others might say it must be done or needs to be done. I think to boil it down probably to the most minuscule particle of witchcraft is really to be attuned to a different energy, even to this might be faith. This can also be just curiosity and hope for something else that is also out there, but that is also within you, and where it is coexisting, and where you can also feel a sense of power to create your own reality, to create a sense of a world beyond what the eyes can see. But it's also a sense of community, and community can be with other witches, but it can also be with nature and just like the world and the unseen world around us.
I love that you bring up community because that is a big topic, I feel like, with a lot of women stepping into their personal awakening journeys or spiritual awakening journeys, where oftentimes, at least in the beginning of my open, personal development journey, I didn't have a lot of people who were awakening and stepping into this consciousness and knew what energy or ritual was. And so finding women's groups, community was a really powerful step, especially like going out to nature and then feeling support from the trees and earth and being like, wow, it's not just me. I have community in all things. So that's so beautiful. That is like part of the all-encompassing like witch.
I appreciate you also feeling that and speaking on it because, and I also want to say, I'm so sorry if you can hear my cat snoring. She wanted to be in on this, but she's fallen asleep. So if you hear little snores, it's coming from over there. But it's interesting because to me, it was the absence of community that forced me down a path into a world of women gathering. There's an article I wrote on a blog called Call of the Queen, and it does talk about this, just trigger warnings, there are talks of abuse, but it really is, the absence of community, the desire for community really can unlock this magic. Whether you declare the word witch or not, it is so potent in these settings. And even when you're not looking for it, it finds you.
So beautiful. So for anyone who is feeling curiosity about, the witch world or feeling a call to maybe embody their like inner witch, where can someone start?
I love that you've asked this. I'm actually currently working on a beginner's course that I'll hopefully be able to share in the new year. However, before then, I always like to say, like, use all your free resources first. One of the best things I think that I did was, of course, find community. I am a solitary practitioner, so that means I don't have a coven, but you don't need to be a part of a coven. But also looking into your own culture it's going to be opening a lot of doors for different deities, gods and goddesses. Also be aware of what you're drawn to. And there can even be an element of like the shadow self that's like, ooh, I don't know if I should go in there. I would say that's a huge message to kind of go in there and see what that's about. There's so many modalities. I would say I started with reading a lot of books. So Llewellyn, they have, that publishing company has a lot of great books, a lot of great sources. It's starting off small. Don't overwhelm yourself because there's a lot of differing opinions about witchcraft and about magic. Focus on what inspires you because inspiration is magic. And that's going to be your golden thread to the next moment.
You're bringing like a fifth dimensional perspective to like a third dimensional maybe concept, like inspiration. We feel like, for me, inspiration is like, oh, I get this idea and then I act on it. But where did this inspiration come from? And it's like going deeper. Like, was I meant to have this message? Did I open my creativity in a way that I'm meant to hear this and be inspired and share with others? So I love that like multidimensionality and like expansion from something that might seem maybe more third dimensional and expanding upon it. And I think that is so much about this like spiritual awakening journey where we are realizing we are not just human, we are multidimensional beings. And however you find what like energy aligns with you is how you can like expand that and deepen that connection to the divine. And I want to ask you about the deities, and you said something else which I am not too familiar with. Can you expand on who those are and like how they can help us through this journey?
Absolutely. So deities, gods, goddesses, there are different spiritual guides. A lot of that will come from different cultural backgrounds or even just different cultures that you might be interested in. I would say just be careful to, not culturally appropriate. For example, some deities that I work with, Persephone, Circe, Ceridwen, These are a lot of goddesses that work with the hearth. They also work with going from the light to the dark. Persephone, of course, she's like somebody who I'm working with really, really heavily right now. And why this might be important is that for me, just knowing myself, knowing the way I like to approach my magic, I want to embrace both sides, the light and the dark. And this can mean a lot for a lot of people. Some people get scared of these terminologies, but it's something to explore. I find that we are multidimensional beings. So to cut off a part of oneself, to deny oneself a portion of who you could be or who you are, is only going to do you a hindrance. So for me, working with her was going into the shadow self, into the darkness, and seeing what lives there and embracing that. And also there's certain magics that come along with her that are just so potent and beautiful. So different gods, goddesses, and deities can also facilitate magic that you're seeking. The one thing I would say is to do a lot of research around them. Some practitioners, we talk about contracts with them. So if you're looking to manifest something, for instance, Circe is really great if you have dealt with things around trauma and healing. She knows how to walk through that fire. So you can ask her to protect you. However, there's going to be an offering or an exchange involved. So just doing some research on what she might ask of you. And it can literally be in an altar that you're providing pictures of pigs and lions or little figurines of these little animals. She was very much in tune with the animals and of nature. And she is so into herbs. So if you're somebody who's into herbs, I highly recommend dealing with Circe. She's like, ooh, she's very potent. So there's a lot of, I know I just threw so much information out there. I can get really impassioned. But to break it down, it's really just about knowing what your intentions are with your magic. And then you can connect with different deities, gods and goddesses to help amplify and facilitate bringing that into existence.
I love everything you have to say about that. And I love what you said about research, because that's for me how things and spirit guides come into my reality. Is oftentimes like for example, someone listening to this podcast might be like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to work with Persephone or Circe. And if I hear like a word, or a name of someone, I'll be like, oh, who is that? Let me do research, right? And so I'll read all this stuff, and my brain will absorb all this knowledge. And then in meditation, I will actually place the intention, like I want to connect with this specific spirit guide. And so it could be one of the goddesses, it could be Jesus, Buddha, an ascended master, like whoever you're like working with. And I will just feel in with intention to the energy of that being. And from there, I can either, we'll communicate like what you revealed, like, oh, they want an offering in order to help support you for this thing. And I love that you say offering, because oftentimes, like, we just go and we think there's no next intelligent step or more awareness around like the things we're doing and the actions we're taking. But with witchcraft, right, and magic, it's like, well, let's take it a step further. I'm gonna go outside and take a little walk, but before I step on the grass, let me like offer it like some water or a piece of my hair, to like just offer it a part of me and ask it like, can I please step on you? And like, take a walk, and like then you'll hear it in your heart. And that's like that's kind of what I've been expanding, in my little like magical presence and experience.
Dani, I love that. You touched on two things that I just want to say they're so, so beautiful. One is how you said to connect through meditation. A lot of other witches that I have encountered in my life talk about how they connect to their guides through meditation, yes, being one, even through dreams, through just visualization. They can be on the subway and just having a moment to cultivate this sort of like, oh, if I met them, would we shake hands? Would it be, they really try to envision what that would be. I think it's so important to bring it to the third eye. Like it just makes that step or that connection feel it's that much closer. It's such a beautiful thing that you've done. And it's something that I usually deal with in dreams. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should actively try to meditate and see what happens here. I just love that new experience. Second thing that you brought up Well, second moment that you talked about where you were saying, oh, asking the grass if you can step upon it. I mean, even science talks about speaking kindly to plants and how they respond to certain terminology, to certain kindness, to the tone of your voice. And then they actually attune to you to benefit you. So if you're growing herbs and then you end up ingesting them or putting them into, as we say, like a kitchen witch would do, put them into your recipes, it actually amplifies more inside you on a molecular and even, spiritual level. It's just so expansive. So I love that you're like, oh yeah, just talk to the grass, of course. That you're a witch, Dani.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's so beautiful.
Okay, so I love that you talked about the subway. So currently you're residing in, I believe, like the New York area?
Yes, I'm in Brooklyn.
Well, so we're like kind of representing both coasts right now. And I want to talk a little bit about like how we got introduced because I think everything is like always so divine timing and divinely guided. But I took my ICM coaching certification last year, with which lots of my or lots of my audience knows, and I connected with this one beautiful lady who actually goes to you, I think, for readings or has some connection. And she messaged me one day and was like, you have to meet this girl, Bronté. She's like amazing, and I feel like your energies are like similar. And I remember going to your page and being like, I'm obsessed. Oh my goodness, I want to hear everything.
Oh, Dani, I felt the exact same way. And the same person reached out to me outside of after you and I had been connected and was like, you need to reach out to Dani. You two have the same energy. She said the same thing to me. And I was like, she's not wrong. She knew.
And I love that, just like energy attracts energy. And really, like when you are in your soul frequency, living in your pure, magical state, things just align to you and you're attracted to other people who are like on your frequency.
100%. It was actually, I think I mentioned this to you, like a week before anyone had said anything to me about a podcast. And I hadn't actively done any sort of like manifestation spell work around this. So I was like, whoa. I had been thinking for like a week beforehand, like, oh, I would just love to connect with somebody and speak on a podcast about all things witchy and the metaphysical and just like energy and how we can all connect in this way. And then less than a week later, I get contacted by you and I was like, this is magic. Magic exists.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So, for anyone who's wanting to bring more magic into maybe their daily routine or daily life, are there any tips that you can provide them for that?
Yes, I'm going to do my best to give as simple instruction as possible. One thing I would say is, so I'm going to try and look at the different elements. So when it comes to water, one thing I would suggest is if you're going to have a bath, sprinkle some Himalayan salt in there, add some herbs. Different herbs mean different things. If you're wanting to cultivate love, obviously add some rose petals or also rose essential oil. If you're wanting to call in some abundance, I would say add some rosemary. You can also, if you have like jade crystals around, you can put that around the tub to call that in. And also there's other modalities as well, but that's something so simple. And you could also just, use that within a shower sequence as well. It doesn't have to be a bath. It's just that it forces you to sit and sort of meditate while you're doing that. And one thing I would also talk about is fire magic. Fire magic is the fastest form of magic. So if you are wanting to manifest something, if you're needing something to sort of like happen now, for instance, you just went on an interview for a job and you're like, I just want to hear back within the next 3 days or 3 business days or the next week. I would say light a candle and put on a piece of paper what it is you're calling in, what it is you desire, or also you can say what you do not want and burn it. And that it's like you are asking the universal energy of fire to be like, I'm on it. There are a couple of other things I could recommend in terms of earth magic and also air. Air is so beautiful and flighty, I will say. She kind of has a mind of her own. She likes to do things on her own time. She's not the slowest. I would say earth is something, if you have like a long-term goal and you have some plans and things to do ahead of time, definitely plant seeds. And I mean, you can take a piece of paper, have a house plant, and you're watering it, you're nurturing it. You do not want this plant to die, because that won't be good for your manifestation or what you want to call in. Take that piece of paper, write what you want on it, and then plant it like a seed into the plant or outside in your garden. It can even be surrounding something for yourself. I would say you can even try to manifest for other people. They do need to be open to it in order to accept gifts. But there are so many different modalities. And I love, Dani, that you talked about meditation, because visualization, meditation, anything where you're forced or you force yourself to stop and take a moment and connect to something greater, that is magic. And it doesn't ask for anything else except you and time.
Absolutely love that. And I was laughing when you were saying about fire magic because I actually didn't know that. But a friend gave me these like little wish papers, and I had a candle and I wrote, this is wild. On my birthday, I did a little meditation. I think it was the full moon on August 19th or new moon. And I wrote that I want more financial abundance. And I wrote it on there and I put it on fire. And that next day was when my tenant told me she was moving out, which now I'm in the process of selling my condo, which it's going to take work, right? Like actionable steps, but I'm going to come into enough for like a down payment on a house. And so it's just what I was like, that was the fastest a manifestation had come out. Literally within 10 hours that next morning, I got that text and I was like, wait, what? So I'm just bringing that to my awareness. I love that. And I love that you say, like, when you're taking a bath, the purpose is like to bring more stillness and like presence into that moment. And it's kind of like romanticizing your life. Like, it's beautiful to have these like herbs as well, bringing some beauty into life and like having it smell wonderful and just like bringing beauty into the aspects of your life and bringing presence into that moment. And I don't know if you can see here, I have like a couple little like vibey, like tarot, witchy things here, and I've been like trying to add to it a little bit more and more because it just like makes me feel good and just like bringing that romanticization to everything in your life is magical.
Absolutely. And it might not sound like, oh, that's water magic, but it is. And the reason it is because water is associated to how we feel for the most part, especially when it comes to comfort. It's very much about water energy. So the fact that you're doing that, even though there's no water involved, it is very much water magic. And you could amplify that if you wanted to in any way. If you have sacred water with you, even moon water, because I love that you were already doing some lunar magic. You can always just like take it and sprinkle it on the items. Like magic is limitless. I could go on about the different like spells and the different additions that you could add to your life because it literally is endless. So that's why it's like, even if somebody says, oh, you could do this, or this is what you should do, always listen to yourself. Always know what magic is right for you.
I love that because as a beginner, or maybe I'm not a beginner, maybe I'm advanced, I just didn't know it. But like as I was opening up my, spiritual gifts, it's like, oh, am I doing this right? Am I doing this correct? Is this like correctly using this kind of witch magic? Is I guess what kind of comes through my mind. What is also coming to me is kind of like what you're doing is correct because it's intuitively coming to you. So like, oh, I heard this word, water magic. What does that mean to me? Okay, for me, that means I'm going to go actually shower. I'm not going to bath because I don't have a bath, but I'm going to spray like some essential oils into the shower and I'm going to put like some vibey lights around, and it's like I'm making it my own. So just know like there are like ways to do it, but there's no like correct way. Like the correct way is your way. And I love that you say it's like it's limitless because there are ways in which people have downloaded and channeled this information. And so this is like, a baseline foundation of that, like what you're sharing, but that everyone can do magic. And all you have to do is place it in your heart. Like, okay, I'm going to do this. This is called water magic. And then you're doing it. And obviously from a place of love.
100%. And it's funny. I love that you said, maybe I thought I was a beginner. Maybe I'm intermediate. I mean, you really have been doing so much. Everything you've said, I'm like, that's magic. That's magic. That's magic. So You're beyond it. You're well on your way. And I think a lot of people listening to this, I also hope, is that they'll realize that they too have been on the path of witchcraft and of magic in general. Whether you want to, again, like take the word witch is up to you. But magic doesn't need another label. It can exist in the way that it feels right to you. I love that you just explained that so clearly.
Yeah. And so, how has magic been beneficial for someone maybe working through healing or growing or expanding?
Yeah, so one thing I will say, I'm not going to go into any gritty details, but just trigger warnings surrounding anyone who's experienced abuse of any kind, of any nature. So, one thing I will say, and this is going to be this is controversial, but one thing that I do strongly believe in is hexing, binding, cursing in a way for somebody who has experienced intense trauma to send that back, return to sender. Magic can be extremely powerful, and it doesn't mean that that person is now going to, the person that did all this. It's not the intention of wanting to hurt the person, although that's probably going to come out. It's really about ripping out these roots that others have planted upon us. And even if you're not someone who has been, let's say, abused, but has experienced major hardship, you can also return to sender, even in terms of it being a workplace and not a specific person. Even if you're like, I will never go back to that town that I once was in, it can be also something, a certain situation that has happened to you, to remove it from you. And you can work with different, I would say, even the gods and goddesses that we've touched on earlier. And there's others, so many others that can help to alleviate any pain that you have experienced. And through magic, you can help yourself also. And that's one of the biggest things here, is that you're doing it yourself. You're empowering yourself. No one else is needed to do this. You have the tools at your disposal. And all that might be needed is, I need a little bit of information here and there. I might research, or I might reach out to Dani and see if she can help me by looking into the Akashic records. Or maybe I need a Reiki healing, or asking for your spiritual community to guide you in a new direction. There's just so many things, because that in itself is also magic. Energy is magic. I will say too, my own journey getting into witchcraft specifically was one of immense healing. And now it's been a decade of heavily being in the craft, and I'm enjoying it. I'm able to, because I worked through some heaviness. And I think we all have this experience. Once you're out the other side, and you might have to, work through this here and there in your life. But once you're out the other side, it's like, now I want to dive into fairies. Now I want to dive into dragons. I want to look into like the other realms that are sort of like sprinkled in here. Let's go, because I'm able to now feel the power of my magic. I want to explore the magic that is now out here.
I love that. Okay, I want to talk about the elementals and fairies and dragons and all the things, but I want to go back to what you were talking about, like what you were revealing as controversial, like the hexes and sending it, returning to sender. I'm curious on how you do this, because in the past I was so, opening up my psychic gifts, it can be scary and fearful. You're like, "Oh, am I being psychically attacked, or is someone putting a curse on me?" And it can feel very scary. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that. I do believe that like that can happen, but I also believe that there's a certain frequency in which you're at. And of course, like in the beginning, of your healing journey, that might not be the case. So like, how would you go about returning that to sender? Because for me, my intention would be to transmute it to love and send it back to them. But I'm curious on, yeah, how you would kind of expand on that a little bit.
Absolutely. The one thing I will say too, Dani, is that there are so many who would return it with love, and there's nothing wrong with either option or either modality or intention. I think it really is up to the individual. And one thing I will say is that and again, I can only speak from my experience and the experience of certain people I have helped to facilitate some of these things. Rage is a very it's a very important tool. It's a very important element of ourselves that a lot of us, the majority of us, deny access to or deny exists. And when one has been in a place where they feel trapped, and have been taken advantage of, this rage wants to build instead of having it affect the already affected body, which we know just scientifically there's physical things that are going on in high stress situations, healing on a physical level, emotional level, mental level, and then also the spiritual level. It's best to get this out. And I also believe in karma. I believe that what is meant to come around will come around. But when it comes to, at least in certain communities, certain witches will say, hexes, binds, curses, those are all three different things. However, the overall intention is you are sending something to someone with the intention it is deserving, and you're just facilitating, almost like you're facilitating, okay, well, karma's going to get you, but I'd like it to happen sooner. I want karma to sort of be like a messenger. Think of maybe like Mercury, who comes through and you're like, oh, here, take this. And just know that when you land providing that karma to that person, they also deserve this back and this back and this back, because I didn't deserve it in the first place. I would say I would help an individual do this. There are different forms. So it really depends on one, what the individual wants to be sent back. And I will never impose, even though, you feel things for someone, you're like, you want them healed so greatly, never impose what I might do. It's always about the individual. And so let's say that they just wanted to bind them. This is something where it would be, okay, so we are going to use different tools, it just depends, and make sure this person does not do harm to themselves, do not do harm to the person that has been affected, and do harm to no one else. It binds them from being able to do so, to protect anybody in their sphere, in their environment, or anybody who they might now futurely be involved with. It isn't something that necessarily lasts. These things tend to not last for very long. In terms of a curse or hexes, both of these are something that you do send out. So again, it's something, and for certain cultures, it's private practice. It just depends on the magic and sources you're using. But a lot of different witchcraft in different cultures actively partake in these modalities and in these practices. Some, I will say, not for necessarily the reasons that I'm talking about. They might just feel annoyed with someone and want to take a little action on that front. I don't condone that. I think, there's an element of it, where it's deserving. But it all comes down to what each person feels for themselves, like what we talked about earlier, what feels most right to oneself. And I have, at least for myself and for others that I've worked with in these matters, they get a strong sense of relief. And it's not something that necessarily they feel in that moment, but there's also things I usually add in to say, okay, focus on this now. This is going to be released. Allow that to remove itself from you. And it'll maybe take weeks, months, but they really do feel that that person has been removed and that the trauma has healed. I always recommend, though, please seek psychological advice and help. Therapy is a beautiful thing. It also is its own form of magic. So please, don't just do one, do them all. Help yourself in all the ways possible.
Thank you so much on expanding on that. And a couple things, because in my mind, when you see like hex, right, or curse or binding, I guess my perception of it, my limited perception on what this is, it's like it feels like evil, right? But the way you're describing it is like, no, it's actually like this person did this harm to me. And so I'm going to make sure they can't do that harm to anyone else. And so you're sending that back to them so that they can like know they can't hurt or like do unto others what they did to you, which was like not of your highest good. And because what you mentioned, you're like, oh, if like someone's annoying me, I'm going to send them a curse. Like in my mind, that's like, oh, that sounds like really not good. But obviously, like it wouldn't be, that's not the point of it. Like it's more so like to be able to release whatever clause or whatever abuse or whatever like trauma that someone put onto you and pull it out of you so that that person can't do that and spread that to other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The one way I like to look at it too is if somebody's annoyed you and you're like, I want to hex them. I'm like, that's very juvenile. It just, I'm like, oh, so you haven't done a lot of work in this. You just, but with that being said, that I do know that there are certain communities that they have that free flowing. And again, it is due to the practitioner to decide. Witchcraft, they do have a lot of different rules. I will say in covens, you'll find that there are very specific rules and each coven is different. But solitary practitioners, of course, it's to the individual. But you're absolutely right in saying that it is very much of, I like saying, the return to sender. Also, I'm somebody who, like you mentioned, the fear surrounding curses, hexes, and binds is usually what comes up, as an individual. We're like, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want somebody to send that to me. And in Wicca, the rule of 3 does apply, where it's like, whatever you send out, you get times 3 back. Now, that's not a rule that I live by or that has sat with me in my craft, but it doesn't make it not true for those who do believe that that is a part of their craft. The way that I operate is very much of, no one can curse me or hex me without my consent. And I think that it's also true to those you send things out to. So even if you are hexing, binding, it might not reach the person, but my gosh, it is out of you and it has an intention. Whether it reaches them, I know karma, she's gonna deal with it, but at least it is out of you. There's no more root. There's no more thorn. It is gone.
Right. And that's so empowering. So are you facilitating these like beautiful empowerment, like witchy readings with your tarot, or how is this like coming about when you're facilitating this healing for your clients?
Yeah, so normally what happens is all of my clients have come to me through tarot readings, and there are certain clients who have experienced pretty traumatic pasts, and I just put it out there as an offering. If you ever want to heal this portion of what you've experienced, I can give you some information. You can mull it over and let me know how you feel. Because also, there is a stigma surrounding just witchcraft in general. There's a stigma, of course, surrounding curses, hexes, binds, spell work. So I never really lead with, this is what I think you should do. It's always mull it over. Because there have been many times too where I have had clients and I'm like, look, this is something, I'm just going to leave it with you. And they don't, want to move forward because it might not resonate with them, or there's a sense of fear. And it's totally fine. I'm not offended. It's their individual path. So that's usually how it begins. Not them actively trying to get the reading to then lead to one of these spells, I'll say. It usually just comes up after a few readings.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to go a little bit deeper, do you work with like the elementals and fairies and those spirit guide energies?
So I've only recently started like sprinkling in there. I have so much more work to do. Like even as a decade-old witch, right? We're always going to be learning and expanding. And I haven't gone too far in. I've also realized, so I have Irish background, which they have a lot of folklore around the fairies, and I'm trying to do a lot of research there. I believe her name is Anya or Anye. She is the queen of the fairies, and I'm so sorry for anyone who's Irish who's listening because I probably butchered her name, but she's also someone I'm trying to just put feelers out for, because in the springtime I'd really like to connect with her. But I have so much more research to do. All I know is I love the idea of respecting their world. There's a lot of fear also around fairies. So I want to dive into what that means for a lot of people and what that can mean for me, because a part of me wants to sort of infiltrate their world just to take a little peek and collaborate. I want to be a part. I want to provide something and receive something, which they tend to do in our world, but I have a lot more research to do.
I love that because often we think like I had this meditation and then I met, let's say the fairy goddess queen, and then, I know all this information now. And often sometimes that's not the way things just channel through, especially if you don't have like, your channel is not that open, or let's say you just don't have time for self-practice or meditation or whatever the thing. And so that's actually that's how I channel and open my gifts. Like I do research first and I read all the things and I feel what resonates, and then I'll meditate on that energy, right? And then it's like you have that intention for you next summer to connect with her. And for me that was like my light language and my Syrian spirit guides last December. Like I had this intuitive feeling last year, like I'm going to meet my galactic guides, my galactic council, and I am going to open my light language channel. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I just like was open to it. Like it's going to happen. I just know it. And then, I would read up on it, listen to it. And then finally one day I was like, I'm ready. Let's go. Boom. There it was. It came out. There is some work sometimes that you have to do behind all of a sudden just like, okay, I'm channeling this specific fairy, third dimensional or seventh dimensional fairy realm. I feel like there is some, homework that you have to do, and that's okay. And as you open your channel and develop your channel further, sometimes it will get easier, and then you don't have to sometimes do all the research and the information will come to you. But I do think in the beginning it's easy, but it's like there is some work.
110%. I think that the best way to start is to read and to do research. Even if you're inspired by an image, then to do research on that image. It really will lead you down the right path. I love that, Dani. I think you and I are very similar. I mean, we were told we're very similar. And I'm the exact same way. Before I want to touch on something, I mean, I'm not afraid to say I don't know, but I do, if I'm, going to talk on something, I want to make sure that I have some information to back that up and not lead anyone astray. So I totally get that.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your offerings, what you're offering now, and a little bit more of like what your 2025 looks like.
Yes. So my offerings. Basically, what I have going on right now are my tarot readings. So I offer 20-minute incremented readings. So 20-minute, 40-minute, an hour. And you can definitely find that on my website. Also have I don't know how to word this exactly. I have some other options on my website to help one create a spell. And these are things that, of course, one could just, on Pinterest, on Google, you could find spells available online. But what I feel is most potent is curating a spell specifically to the individual. And it takes an hour. So what I do is I sit down with the person who's seeking this and I ask them a series of questions surrounding, if you were to work with an element, what are you most drawn to? What crystals do you have access to at home? So that you also don't have to like buy a lot of things. How quickly do you want this to happen? And being realistic about it. Not being single and wanting to get married in the next month is not going to necessarily happen unless, I mean, well, I say that, but magic is magic. So they're just like, I ask a few questions and then I end up writing usually words, and I'll ask questions surrounding what words right now when you think of the thing that you want to call in, because spells are all about calling things in or releasing. So either way, it's what are the words that make sense to you that are associated to this? And then basically creating the written spell for that person. And then I have also some candles or some herbs and things like that I'll also provide if they need them. And that's one of my favorite things to do. I don't get to do it that often because again, it's more about my readings, which is wonderful. I love them. I love exchanging that kind of energy, but I also love to be able to facilitate really calling in abundance. So that spell option is on the website as well. And I am an artist, so I create little spooky trinkets and things, which you can also find online. And then hopefully in 2025, I'll be releasing my witch school, which is the first course is going to be for beginners.
Absolutely love that. And For me, what I've noticed a spell to be like, if you were to like kind of exchange the word, wordplay, it's kind of like it's an affirmation or a prayer or an intention, but it's like put into this really thoughtful action because words are magic. Words, like that book, what is that book? The Four Agreements. Like words can be magic or they can be black magic. If you tell someone, that they're ugly or something, like literally you're giving them black magic by telling them something that is really your own projection or perception of the experience. It has nothing to do with that other person. And so, yeah, spells I think are so beautiful. And this episode should be going out the week of Halloween. Is there anything that someone can do while the veil is thin? Because I know Samhain is coming out on Halloween, and that I believe is the witch's New Year's. But is there any like little things that someone at home could do to maybe connect to the other side or utilize that witchcraft?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to recommend is connecting to ancestors or any past loved ones, even past pets. So they call this a dumb supper. And all you need is you take one of your plates that you have at home or a pet bowl if you're calling, your pet back to visit. And you do actually put food that you think that they might enjoy or something that you feel that you're like, I really want to share this with them, onto the plate or into the bowl. You can light some candles. It's really just about having dinner and inviting those who have passed to the table. And it's one where, because the veil is so thin, the belief is that they will join you. And I have also done this. I do a ritual every year for myself and my partner surrounding those who have passed. And it can also be a little different, but it feels like they're there. It really feels like there's, usually it's a hand on the shoulder, and it can feel really comforting. And also, if you haven't taken a moment to connect with them, that's all that is needed here. It's also, who doesn't want to come back and see their loved one? So you're giving them a gift.
I love that. That is so sweet. Oh my goodness. Are there any last things that might want to come through that the collective's meant to hear about magic?
Magic is something you feel. It's something that you can't touch unless you bring it into reality and you make it actionable. That is where magic becomes tangible. It's in your hands. It's not something necessarily that you can taste unless you create something that is delicious through this magic. It's maybe not something that you can hear, but if you sit quietly on your own, it will speak to you in many forms that you are also seeking, and you may not even realize that it's something that you need. It's in each and every one of us, and it is also outside of us. And magic can be whatever you decide it to be. It is not one thing, it is all things.
I absolutely love that. It's like believing is seeing versus seeing is believing. I believe it to be true, and so it will be true, and so it is, and so it is, and so it is.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Bronté, for being here. This was so informational and magical.
I feel the exact same, Dani. Thank you so, so much for having me. And thank you all for listening. Just sending
Oh,
out so much magic, love, and I wish everyone some great abundance. And so mote it be, or something greater.
beautiful. And where can all of these beautiful souls find you?
Yes, so you can find me at The Whisper Coven across all social medias, and my website, thewhispercoven.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bronté, for sharing your beautiful witchy wisdom. Until next time.
Thank you so much.